Hello and welcome. This is Kishkisan, and today I will be covering my newest creation, Orange Green Rainbow, and I call this deck Sanguine Deserts for the reason of it playing Sanguine Steel. Now, before you stop watching the video, let me explain myself. Why do I play Sanguine Steel in this deck? It's because this deck can really snowball with the tokens. Now, I admit that the Sanguine Steel is a bit memeish, and you can possibly replace it. And I will show you a version where I don't play the Sanguine Steel, which is also a probably a better version. But the Sanguine Steel is a decent enough card in this deck, even though I wasn't able to pull it off. But I submitted this deck for Rune and Mirrors to play on stream, and they were both able to pull off a Sanguine Steel for the win. So, and in theory, really, if you look at the deck and how it functions, you'll also at least accept that the Sanguine Steel should fit in a deck similar to this. So let me get started with the deck. The deck is really centered around the tokens that we can create using the Guardian Plateaus. And there is one particular minion that we keep uh, abusing for the Guardian Plateau, and that's the Born Again. The Born Again keeps recurring, and we keep playing it on the Guardian Plateau. Now that's not a very good combo on its own, but when we introduce buffs into the equation, it becomes really interesting. Now the home field advantage provides buffs for both the minion. When we put the home field advantage next to the Guardian Plateau, uh, everything is buffed up, and these simple tokens, these 2/2 tokens, can easily become 4/4 tokens, and these really require attention. And at some point, the opponent is going to really have to address the tokens at every turn, or they just lose. And the rest of the deck is really centered around this. Now, you will notice that the deck doesn't run a lot of top end because at its core, it's a token deck. It wins through the tokens. And you can really add in the Aikutursu or the Chord Stag instead of some of the stuff in the deck. And this is not really the version that I will be showing some gameplay with, as the deck went through a lot of changes, and I think some of the games that I played with the earlier versions were really notable that I didn't want to cover some of the newer games. But anyway, not to get distracted, I will go over the card choices in this deck. So the Angelis, I haven't really played the deck post the nerf for the Angeli. I'm not really sure if Angeli is still worth playing over the Seal of Exile, but I think it's worth testing a little bit to convince myself whether it's worth it or not. But I think I'd go with it's probably worth it. And the Born Again is the core to the combo that we mentioned. Sugar Plum Fairy provides a very nice agile minion, and the life tab is very good. The home field advantage is how we buff our tokens. Leshy Green is well, if we get a board full of tokens, Leshy Green just can become easily a 7/7 or even larger than that. So that's very nice. And early on, even getting a 4/4 Leshy Green isn't the worst. The Gamma Yun as a 4 as a the Gamma Yun is played in this deck because it has divination, and this deck doesn't really run a lot of enchantments, which is something that I should have mentioned earlier. But on this note, the deck lacking enchantments means that we really the deck not running enough enchantments means that we really try to abuse all the definitions in the color combo. So this means that we play Gamayun, and in my earlier version I used to play Lamp, but I thought I would just take out Lamp for one enchantment. It felt better that way. But definitely, just playing the Gamayuns, the Serendipity Ifrits, and the Parry and the Raziel to make sure that we at least get some draw and to at least ha- not feel the effect of not having a lot of enchantments. Now, on the point of enchantments, the not running enough enchantments in this color combo is kind of forced on us because there aren't really a lot of good enchantments. Green really doesn't have a lot of good enchantments beside the Ruslan's Bite and the home field advantage, but really everything else is just not very. It's not something that we really want to run in a deck like this. Maybe the Ruslan's Bite, but I found that it's not very good. It's not that good. Uh, and the home field advantage really just makes it that we don't really care about it that much, and we really want to care more about the deserts than the green enchantments because of Mardikor. So the eager recruiter also provides a cheap way to add something on the Guardian Plateau, making the Guardian Plateau play on turn 6 with the eager recruit, something that we always want to try and do. And the Dark Passenger is in this deck as one of the best removals because with the board always being virtually full on our side, Dark Passenger is always going to be nice because the opponent is just not going to be able to ever play around Dark Passenger when our board is going to be at least almost always full. And the Hammam Retreat is very nice because it prevents the blight, which is the most common answer to a deck like ours. And even if we remove the Hammam Retreat, it's really very hard for the opponent to keep dealing with a chain of born again after born again after born again on a Guardian Plateau. So I think it's really not necessary to run that many copies of Hammam Retreat. And I think Sandscape could be we could run more Sandscapes for the Soma Oasis and the Marticore. I'm really not sure about this part yet, but I think this is definitely it's definitely correct to run at least one Hammam Retreat and maybe two Sandscapes. I'm not really sure. And the Sandscape is might seem like an odd enchantment to run, but I've come to really like this enchantment after playing Blue Orange Rainbow. Because this enchantment is really you pay 2 mana and you get 3 enchantments. And when you replace each of these enchantments with Rainbow, you get their mana back. So this is basically you're putting 2 mana and you can get back 4 mana. So in that sense, it's really interesting. Um, Desertification engine is really nice because we want to replace the deserts anyway with the Soma Oasis. Primitive Defeat is for the divination, even though it can hurt a bit, but it's really necessary because, as I mentioned, the small number of enchantments that this deck plays, Bury at the Gates as well, is really nice for any rainbow deck. And the Raziel, similarly for the divinations, and the Mardikor, one of the best payoffs for playing deserts, and the Armageddon Angel, which is of course necessary in almost every orange deck. Now this is the Sanguine Steel version, and I want to show my non-Sanguine version as well. So this is the non-Sanguine version, and as we can see, I I I just don't run the Sanguine Steel in this deck, but instead I focus more on the desert synergies. I try to add in the sand scale worms. And a possible way to do this would be to add the short stag and the short stag and an Ico. Perhaps that's one way to do it. But I feel they're a bit expensive for this deck. Beside the Armageddon Angel, because this deck doesn't really try to win with these big stuff and tries to swarm the board. So you can definitely make the argument for them, but at the moment I'm really enjoying the deck uh, being built this way. The deck just runs the same, and that's really the only difference is the removal of the Sanguine Steel and adding in the Sand Scale Worms. So that's it, and I'll go over a couple games with the decks. I think I have one game with the Sanguine version and the second game with the non-Sanguine version. And actually, in both games, you probably will not notice that one of them is the Sanguine and the other is this non-Sanguine version, as they play pretty similarly to each other. So let's get down to it. So the first game is against Merlin, and he's playing a yellow-green necromantic deck. Now this deck doesn't really have any tech answers to necromantic, so the first couple turns we really don't have anything to do because we really don't want to give Merlin an easy necromantic. And we play it slow. We don't invest into the board, and having the Traitor's Murmur in hand is very nice for us. And having the Anheli in hand, I decide to go in for the board, hoping that Merlin just moves the Necromantic, and I can Anheli the Necromantic back to his deck, and just start playing the game. But Merlin ended up having a second Necromantic, which made it very annoying for me to play against, as I'll have to Unheli this, and I was worried that he would just move his Necro, and I would just move the parry, and it would be a weird dance of him moving the Necro and me moving the parry. But also, Yellow Green Necro plays the Foul Harvest, which is something you should always be worried about playing against a Yellow Green Necro, because activating their Necro with a Foul Harvest is very strong because they get back 3 mana, and that 3 mana they can ramp into plays that won't be possible. I would probably cover my yellow green Necro in the future. It's a deck that makes use of the ramp to ramp into the Stadium Hulkins as their one gems. But yeah, not to get distracted, I end up playing Anheli on that minion, and I should mention that this game was played before the Anheli nerf. So while it says that, so while it shows that the nerf is in effect, you'll notice that I'll have 1 mana left, even though I shouldn't. So that's the reason, because this is before the Friday batch, for the for the for the for the for the Friday patch that should make all of this consistent. So right now, I just inhaled that, and I'm getting close to 6 mana. So I'm hoping to just have Merlin not have the Foul Harvest, and uh, try to wait till to wait till 6 mana so that I'll be able to murmur whatever comes out of the Necro. But Merlin actually has the Plague Maidens, which he will be using to activate his Necro. And I was hoping that by him going face and not having Foul Harvest, that I would force him to play a Misanthropia by investing significantly into the other side of the board. And I do that by playing the Gamayun and the Eager Recruit. And I thought that was significant investment of board that's worth of a board clear. And I expected the Misanthropy. I did not expect the Plague Maidens, but they both ended up fine for me, I guess. And we found our home field advantage and the Guardian Plateau. So our combo is already in effect. And we can already start pumping out tokens as soon as turn 6. And here Merlin just activates his Necro and deals 3 damage to my face. But it doesn't kill the Gamayun. So I will just end up murmuring the Short Stag. And the Gamayun is nice for dealing the 4 damage here, and the Short Stag is murmuring the Short Stag is going to be very hard for Merlin to deal with, unless he had a murmur. Because even if he detains the Short Stag and deports it, it doesn't go back to hand as it's ephemeral. And that's exactly the play that we do here. And as we noticed, the Gamayun really gave us a lot of draws these couple turns, and it was, you know, is that we're keeping our hand size pretty nice. And Merlin indeed goes with that play, and it was very low tempo as he had no other play. On the other hand, if we didn't have an answer, he would have gone with the twins, and we probably have to play the angel, and the game would have progressed very differently. So the combo is we find the complete combo here. We find the home field advantage, and we find the Born Again, and we find the Guardian Plateau. We only need a second home field advantage. It's nice to have, but it's not necessary. Like this is just I think the having this combo is just putting the opponent on a block. You're gonna either have to kill me or you have to deal with these tokens every other turn. And that's exactly what happens here. Play the Born Again, and I find the second home field advantage. So this is looking very nice for us. And yeah, the opponent plays the uh, the Necro here, and just play the home field advantages, and that's it. We even trade into the Necro so to prevent any shenanigans he might do here, and force him to hard cast whatever he wants to play. He could, if I leave a Necro on board, he could try to discard something else as his Boneyard was empty, and cheat it out, and possibly make play two more stuff than he otherwise could have. And we still have all our minions alive, and we're just asking him, are you going to block all this damage? That's 10, 14 damage on the board. Are you going to be able to block it? Or are you going to have to force? Are we going to force a misanthropy here? This is looking very bad for the opponents, as there's really no easy way to deal with this. And we already can keep building a second board every other turn. And look at this. This is just a 6/6, a 3/3, a 3/3. That's just 12/12 in stats for 4 mana, and we have this Baba Yagas then coming down. And this is just looking extremely nice for us. And the Gamion just draws here, so this is just game here. We have lethal. We have lethal here anyway. And yeah, that was a game that just showed these enchantments coming into play, and all these tokens being buffed. It puts immense pressure on the opponent. And the deck has a really solid core by being able to withstand a Necro deck without even checking for it. So the second game is one that plays the non-Sanguine version, and I'll go over it shortly. So we're up against You Can Call Me Al, and he's playing a green-purple spirit deck, and we're playing the non-Sanguine version of the deck. So all we need to do really is to survive the early game, and playing against green-purple spirits is very tricky for this deck, as we're going to be flooding the board, and flooding the board really just feeds their yokai and their Judas Kiss. And they don't play the Judas Kiss actually, but if they played it, it's something to keep in mind. If they played the Judas Kiss, it would be something to keep in mind as playing the Judas Kiss when we don't have lethal, or if they have the Defy Death. I'm not really sure. Yeah, this deck plays the Defy Death. So if they have the Defy Death and play the Judas Kiss with us having a board full of tokens, that would be very hard for us to deal with. So I didn't really feel like this is a matchup where I needed the Guardian Plateau necessarily. I just needed to stay alive. So finding the Sugar Plum Fairies was a priority. And I prioritize finding the Sugar Plum Fairies over having an enchantment draw. So let's see how the game progressed. The opponent goes with the Jaded Courtier, and that's always a bit scary to see on turn 1. Because you know you'll be up against a spirit deck, and spirit decks are really, really insanely scary because of all the breast that they can have with Call from the Grave and the Wailing Yokai, and all the stuff that they can do that most slower decks can't really do anything about, especially a deck without a lot of heal like Orange Green. But I think that I managed to do very well and let's see how it goes. So I indeed find the Sugar Plum Fairy, and I make it my priority here to play the Sugar Plum Fairy as soon as possible. But for that, I needed to make some setup. I played the desertification engine here so that I'd be giving space for the Sugar Plum Fairy next turn to be played over here. The desertification engine is a huge body that's not very easy to get through on turn 3, especially when coined on turn 2. I think the correct placement would have probably been on lane 1, but the idea really stands. We don't really doesn't really matter here. But the idea is to really provide a protector for the lurker, Sugar Plum Fairy. It's not very mana efficient what I did, as I do not really have a turn 3 play. But this is a matchup where life gain is the most important asset, and you'll notice that we get really low, even though we gain a lot of life, just because this deck, the green purple spirit deck, can deal a ton of damage. And the Wailing Yokai being played here is not that bad for us, as we can just value trade into it. But we take a lot of damage here. We're taking the 1 damage from the Jaded Courtier, the 1 damage from the House Elf when we attack into the Wailing Yokai, and the Wailing Yokai deals 1 damage. So that's just 3 damage here, and being played, all the spirits being played deal 1 damage to us and gain Al 1 life. So we're already at 19, and yeah, as I said, we're prioritizing playing this and protecting it so that it doesn't die to Racer. And we would like to find something like the home field advantage or something to buff the Sugar Plum Fairy so that we'd be able to gain more life from it. And at this point, I'm just using the Sugar Plum Fairy to keeping the Desert Engine here to just keep protecting the Sugar Plum Fairy. And Sugar Plum Fairy is just happy to go face for the life gain. And we find the second Sugar Plum Fairy, which is really nice. But we notice that we're already at 13 life, and I decided to play the Gamayun because it has Agile. It can just kill any of the minions that he decides to block with. And yeah, we get a second Wailing Yokai, which is really annoying for me to deal with, because now it kills the Desert Engine. And I decided to put the Sandscape on top of my deck rather than the Guardian Plateau, because I didn't really think that this is a matchup where I would have enough time to play the Guardian Plateau. Even if I did have time, I was very afraid of a Wailing Yokai being played in front of my Guardian Plateau and dealing 3 damage to my face. And I was forced to impel and kill the Vixen there, as having the Vixen survive, bring back a Jaded Courtier, and then bring back a Hopeless Necromantic, which is really not something I want to play against. And keeping the Sugar Plum Fairy alive is really one of the highest priorities here, but we have a second one. So I thought this was a chance to set up to just set up a second one so that at least either of them can survive, and I would protect whichever survives, as the opponent really just has 1 card in hand. It would have been very unfortunate if the opponent found a way to deal with the second, with the two fairies, but he didn't, thankfully. And we have a nice hand, and the Mardikor, even without being played on the desert, is very good here. Which is exactly what we do. We play the Mardikor, and we still keep gaining life from the Sugar Plum Fairy, even though the House Elf effectively makes us gain just 1 life out of the Sugar Plum Fairy, as every time we swing we take 1 damage. And the opponent drew the Defy Death here, which was a non-draw essentially, and it gave us some breathing room, and it allowed me a slow turn for me to, I think, play the home field advantage. Yeah, and just provided enough breathing room for me and to be able to heal this 3 damage, which is, it's still not enough, as the wailing yokai off of the call from the grave is still lethal. But it was the best I can do in this situation. And thankfully, the opponent didn't find the call from the grave. But the night hag here is very annoying. And we're sort of not forced to trade into this, as the fairy is still protecting the sugar plum fairy. And I think this was a bit of a bad play on my part here because I don't break the corrupt prayer wheel, but go after the jaded courtier instead, which I think was not the correct play. But I think I should have swung face and then impelled over instead of what I've done. But it didn't hurt to go slow, even though killing the corrupt prayer wheel would have probably been better value, as the corrupt prayer wheel is just dealing 1 damage every time the opponent plays spirit. But the opponent is on a very small hand, so it was a situation where breaking the spirit wheel didn't really matter, as they're both spirit wheel and the jaded courtier are dealing approximately the same damage, and we're still trying to get the to heal and setting up the sugar plum fairies, and these are really just what we need here to win this game. We got the 3 sugar plum fairies this game, which was really nice. And yeah, we're just setting them up and protecting them. Now again, the call from the game would have been the call from the grave would have been lethal, and there was no way to prevent it anyway, so it didn't matter much. I think actually the call from the grave was nerfed by 1. No, actually, it wouldn't have mattered because of the corrupt prey wheel still being alive. So not playing around it was probably correct here, as well. There's no, it's lethal anyway. So yeah, the opponent completely blocks the sugar plum fairy here, which means that we kind of forced to trade now the sugar plum fairy and stop the live gain. We end up finding the murmur, which was a very good draw for us, and we murmur the hopeless necro here, and we're really on the driver's seat here. We're healing for 2 now, and we're at 11. We're pretty safe here. The only thing I was worried about during the game was Judas Hex. But now after the game that I see the game, the opponent doesn't run the Judas Hex, so it didn't really matter. And we're really on the driver's seat here. There's nothing the opponent can possibly do to win the game right now. And we can see all this damage that the opponent is pulling off. He dealt 4 damage to us his last turn, but we're getting there. We have a lot of damage on the board, and I decided to unhally this, as the opponent really doesn't seem to have a lot of plays in his hand, and we have a ton of damage on the board, and I'd probably not get a better use of unhally this game. And yeah, we broke both artifacts, and the opponent really is lost at this point. There's no way for the opponent to do anything, and having the defy death here really just it just meant that he would gain 1 extra turn, but it really didn't matter. I don't think there was any way to make a comeback from this. Even getting a waiting yokai here would only deal 5 damage, I believe. The 3 from the Call from the Grave, as it has been nerfed, and the 2 from the Wailing Yokai, it wouldn't be lethal. It wouldn't be anywhere near lethal, even if he plays 2 Wailing for Yokais, 1 from the Call from the Grave and 1 from hand. It still wouldn't be lethal, because that would be 1 would deal 5 damage and the other would deal only 2 damage, so that would be 7. We're at 11, so we're pretty safe here. And probably should have set the opponent at 3 instead of at 4. It was a slight misplay, but it didn't really matter. There was nothing that the opponent can do here. But yeah, that was a nice game, showing the deck standing up against one of the most oppressive decks in the meta right now, which is green purple spirits. And just these without even assembling all our combos. It just shows the deck is a solid deck that's really, it's also a really fun deck. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And I'll hope to see you in my next video. Thank you everyone for watching.